Hello. How is everyone? This is so cool. I feel like I have all my friends in the audience, which is great. For those that don't know who I am and don't know who Karen is, I'm Veralyn. I am a producer for Radio Rickies at WNYC, which is now a part of the narrative unit. Is this thing working? No? Okay. There we go. And who are you?
And I am Karen Frillmann, and I get to work with Veralyn at WNYC, and we have created now a narrative unit, which basically creates long-form podcast material out of the WNYC newsroom. Right now, we are finishing up the third season of The United States of Anxiety, which was a run-up to the midterm elections, and we're launching a new show in the spring.
Yeah, and so when I pitched this conversation, which was originally called Diversity is Not That Fucking Hard, I didn't want to just have a panel of POCs talking about why it's important to have diverse voices, a conversation that literally I was a radio rookie, and I was a radio rookie in 2004. And it was a conversation that I was hearing people have then. So I was like, well, I want to talk to someone that, first of all, I respect and I know have a lot of the same values I do. Someone that is a decision maker and that has been in public radio for a very long time. And so I pulled in Karen, who loves public speaking, to get up here and talk to me. And Karen, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you specifically is because I came to a conversation at WNYC when you were launching cant, and afterwards we all went to dinner. Do you remember this? Because I told y'all we're going to be mentioning
Saigon
this.
Grill.
And it was after WNYC had been in the news. And I would say that was the most transparent conversation I ever had with people at WNYC, with you, with Kai, with some other people that they don't know that I'm talking about them, so I'll let them be nameless. And you were just spilling all the tea, and it was just like, oh, like the same conversations that I have usually with people in the hallways where we're whispering about what management is not doing. Y'all have the same conversation. So why is it? It's not hard, but it's not happening. Why?
Well, in the case of that conversation, we had just finished a podcast about juvenile justice. And you can't talk about the justice system, you can't talk about juvenile justice without taking a very hard look at racial issues in this country. And we had a fairly diverse team reporting and producing that. And so, first of all, in working long hours together, you can start to really talk to people very directly and hear things in a different way. I mean, when you work together, you start to get to know each other and realize in the best cases, you're all going for the same thing. And so that's really how it happened. We were all exhausted and we sat down and we started to really talk about some of the things that aren't happening at WNYC and some of the things that need to change. And
cant was after There Goes the Neighborhood, which looked at gentrification in Brooklyn. And, at the time, I was doing hyperlocal work in central Brooklyn, in Bed-Stuy, and, listening to it, I wasn't mad. Sometimes you listen to things and you're just like, this does not represent the community. So my baseline, if it's like I'm not furious by listening to something good is happening. So, we've talked a little bit about why that didn't infuriate me and other people.
So this podcast, There Goes the Neighborhood, was the first thing that I helped launch within this narrative unit. And I should say I grew up in New York City and lived here through lived here through the 60s and 70s when New York City was really, really changing. And that was an education that I was eager to somehow bring to my work. And when I met Kai Wright and he came into our newsroom, we started talking about how can we tell the story of gentrification, which everybody knows what it is, everybody knows how it works, except how do we really get at how it feels and what the anatomy of it is. And I felt like we were not going to be able to tell that story, and I will say to you, you are not going to be able to do the in-depth work that you want to do unless you have a team that is very diverse. Because if there's one thing that we understand right now, there are a bunch of different narratives and a bunch of different ways to define reality, right? Like, that's evident to everybody now. And unless you have people who have different points of view, your work is going to be one-dimensional. So let me just play this audio clip from There Goes the Neighborhood, which is really evidence of that, of the kind of tape that different people bring back. Can you play the tape?
Can I get a latte? Latte? Sure. You're going to sit down and have this here and take it to
You know what's interesting? The other day I was walking in my neighborhood and I saw a black elderly gentleman that I hadn't seen in a couple months, and he literally, his eyes flew open and he said, "You're still here." And I went, "Yeah, and you're still here. Things have changed, haven't they?" And we were like, "Yeah, black folks are disappearing."
I'm not ready to sell. I ain't ready to sell yet, and I need them to leave me alone.
Flyers, stuffed in the mailbox. As soon as I see we buy houses, I throw it right in the garbage.
Real estate, that's like the only way out of poverty to reach real wealth.
When he bought it, there was still one or two tenants living in the building. Our agreement on the lease was that I will get it completely vacant, and that's how I got it.
I live in Bed-Stuy. I moved there 4 years ago with lots of other white people. And as a white person, I don't know what my white privilege is. That's part of it, right? It's ignorance. It's about not knowing the benefits that I have because I'm white.
And this neighborhood, I was in there 72 and a half years, and I love the neighborhood, the people, and the stink of it. I love it all, and I'm not going nowhere.
You can't go anywhere.
Oh, I ain't going nowhere. I'm not going nowhere.
Gentrification is obviously a very hot potato type of word.
There goes the neighborhood.
There goes the neighborhood.
There goes the neighborhood.
So the first clip of tape you heard was a woman telling a story about a neighbor she had met. And I don't think that woman would have told me that story. I don't think she would have said, she would have just let me know that how she felt about that. The person who got that tape was Rebecca Carroll, right? She's a black woman who lives in Brooklyn who went out and began to talk to people. One of the people in that montage was a landlord who we were able to get access to with great difficulty, finding people in the real estate business who will actually talk about what it takes to flip neighborhoods, what it takes to flip apartment buildings, what it takes to deliver them empty. That's hard tape to get. We found a reporter who had a relationship, who happened to be a white reporter. And so I think that the lesson that this series really taught me was you need a diverse staff to do in-depth work and to really tell the stories that you want to tell. And it doesn't have to be metro journalism. If you're doing food journalism, if you're doing any kind of work, you really want to get different points of view. And that's that's how you're going to get a bigger, it makes sense in all ways. You're going to get a bigger audience, and you're going to get better tape.
Yeah, and different, but I think like a lot of people, like I think that that's something that theoretically people know, right? And the reason Recca was already on staff. Kai, you already had a relationship with him.
Right.
The Hasidic, you got the guy.
Oh, Jim O'Grady.
Jim O'Grady was already in the newsroom. So it feels like a part of it was that they were already there and you had access to them. So in thinking about what the issues are, why can't I get this? What the problem is, one of the biggest issues is recruitment. Like a lot of times when you look at newsrooms, there's like that one person of color that now has to speak for all of the things and has to be responsible for this work, this new project, and the project that they're working on. So I guess we definitely wanted to talk about like what are the problems, just to go through them a little bit quicker. Recruitment, cultural comfort zone, right? So that's something, and everything we came up with, the stuff that me and Karen and our conversations about this panel that she's seen in the newsroom as a part of why things have not moved as seamlessly and as quickly as, even though everyone knows that it should happen. So maybe like talk a little bit about I think cultural comfort zone is a big one. I know I was telling you that sometimes I'm in the elevator with folks, with white people, and obviously anyone that knows me knows that I'm like super friendly, but if someone that doesn't know me, just by nature of me being a black woman in an elevator with them, there is this like awkward uncomfortability, like they don't want to say the wrong thing, like so like that legit could be a reason for, if someone that didn't know me, for me not to be hired, because as no matter what my resume says, if they don't feel comfortable and they feel like, oh my gosh, I always have to be on edge because now her hair is different, I don't know if I can say anything because her hair is different today, I'll stop talking.
Well, I mean, listen, white people have to be uncomfortable sometimes, have to listen. The benefits are so large in doing so, because you will learn so much. I mean, if you think about audio, if you think about this medium, if you think about the amazing contributions that many different cultures have brought to radio and to audio, I mean, in our lifetimes, we've heard music redefined and recreated, and it hasn't been led by white people. And so the idea that you have something to learn and that you have to get out of your own cultural comfort zone is, you can do it. I mean, and the other thing is networks. We hire our friends. I mean, we hire people that we know. We work long hours. There's a sense of wanting to feel like you can have a shorthand in a certain way. And I feel like you can't make assumptions that people of color aren't going to understand that shorthand or know it or easily become part of it.
Yeah.
And you have to expand your network, and that's really the biggest thing.
And I think that comes a little bit between the fear, like, okay, am I going to just be tokenizing this candidate? Are they gonna like lose out? Are we gonna lose access to our audio? Because apparently, I mean, I've heard that in public radio forever. Never, even on Radio Ricky's, certain things that we would say is like we have the whole explanatory comma thing, like having to, because our audience is precious thing that is so nebulous than the new quote unquote voices, so that being an issue. And at the end of the day, if you don't know, like say like you have two candidates, right, and you're doing all this and they both are equally qualified. The issue is that you're gonna, because of that fear of tokenism, because of that fear of losing audience, almost always when it comes down to the wire, I've seen managers go with the known choice. Well, is it really known? Because you don't know. Like the person could also not work or whatever the case might be. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think that since we're talking about public radio, I mean, it's been, there aren't that many new jobs that open up.
Yes.
If there's a new hire, so much is depending on it.
Yeah.
Everybody's success feels like it's riding on it. And so people have a harder time taking risks because there's a sense that there's less of a margin. And I mean, many, like you came in the door through Radio Rookies. Kai came in the door through a project where we hired him as a freelancer. There's many,
and by
many
coming
people.
in the door, I mean, just
Right.
in interest of full transparency,
Right.
I was involved with WNYC before I went to college, interned in various capacities throughout college, and this is my first full-time job with benefits, and I started in October. So in the door is very
right.
In the door is very relative, though, right?
Right.
Like, you know, and like how many people could have actually, like how many people would have stuck with it? Should had to.
Right, or had the ability to do that. Well, I mean, not very many, not very many.
So let's just say everyone here now, you know, you've decided we need more diversity. Now what, right? Everyone knows this, yes? Yeah, okay. So, because I want to leave time for Q&As, so I'm just gonna kind of just read all three and then we can talk a little bit about it. So what next? Acknowledge your cultural bias and move past it. Take a risk, especially if you don't know no matter who you hire, whether the person is going to be it's good fit or not. You just have to like wing in a prayer. And then ultimately, try harder.
Yeah. And I would say, I mean, look around this room today. Don't leave without making a connection with somebody who doesn't look exactly like you. I mean, these networks and the sparks are available to people. And I think, as Veralyn says, we just have to try harder because it enriches our work. I can't say that enough.
Yeah.
I mean, all of you are here because you want to create narratives. You want to basically be part of this movement, which, I mean, stories run the world. You know, I mean, stories are a training of the mind. That's how we see the world. That's how we understand it. And I guess I feel like I don't want to just see it through the eyes that I have and the mind that I have. I really want to know what Veralyn brings from where she comes from. Be curious. And if you feel a little nervous, that's a good thing.
Yeah. So here is a working list. So we want to add to this. We definitely don't think that this is by any means. This is a starting point. So I always say the thing. I think that also right before I had the editing session on being an editor, and I think I say this in editing rooms and group edits as well. Like, don't be afraid to say the thing and point out the decision that is not aligning with your diversity goals. I feel like I'm talking a lot, but I'll just run through these. Create a diverse hiring committee. I can't tell you how many times people have come to me and said, like, hey, do you know someone? Meaning, do you know someone of color for this job? And then who they're gonna come and speak to is an all-white hiring committee. If I'm a person that is a sought-after person that's good at my job and I'm a person of color and I'm only talking to white people when I go in, I'm not gonna want that job. Or I might want it, but you know, that person, anyway. Expand your network, meaning going to journalism conferences of color, get on email listservs like Producers for Diversity in Public Media. And I also just wanna share the publicradiohires@gmail.com email. They have a table back there where there is a list of diverse candidates of color that you can have access to. And then keep engaged and empower the employees of color at your organization, i.e. fund resource groups, donuts, which is something that they had at Slate, my former employers, where they randomly match people up, because a lot of times that uncomfortable elevator ride is someone that lives that sits like a few seats down from you. So making ways for people to connect, and lunch and learns, etc. And then ultimately, you have the power, speak up and advocate. Speak up and advocate. Karen, would you call yourself an advocate? Not if it feels like a weird thing to just ask you, but maybe can you describe, without going into too many details, a moment in which like you had to be like, okay, this does not align with our diversity goals, or something that we said we were committed to. This actually is the opposite of the thing that we said we were committed to. And people can start lining up if they have any questions.
I think that assumptions get made all the time, and I think at WNYC assumptions have been made about people, and that's the biggest thing that you have to get out of your head, assuming that people can or can't do something. I just was talking to somebody here asking if they knew Jenna Flanagan. Jenna Flanagan was somebody who was sat at the news desk at WNYC and basically supported a host for 5, 6, 7 years. She's now on television hosting Metro Focus, a host in her own right, and I think that at WNYC we didn't exactly know where she could belong. And I think that's it makes me so happy to see her on Metro Focus every night. I mean, it was a lack of our ability in some ways to understand what she could do. And in many ways, TV is a great medium for her.
Well,
but
can I just push back a little bit? Sometimes I feel like it's like not seeing the value that her perspective and like the value in that because of the audience piece. Like I can't tell you how many times I heard like, does that align with WNYC's audience? And I'm like, well, it aligns with the people that I know. So like there is like a clear delineation of between like what does the audience look like and keeping that as opposed to growing new audiences.
Well, I think that's what we're trying to do right now. I think we're trying to grow new audiences. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I heard at the station when we did There Goes the Neighborhood, it sounds like New York. And it's like, yeah, get out of Manhattan, you know, because New York is actually a very interesting place with a lot of different kinds of people. But you have to remember that radio is probably, I mean, it's a broadcast medium that if you go to radio stations in New York, it's a very segregated dial. I mean, it's much more segregated than television in that way. And so I think WNYC is trying. Is it doing a good enough job? No, but we fought to hire you, Veralyn.
I first just want to thank you for being so honest about the length of that journey from getting your foot in the door to then getting the full-time job. With that in mind, I'm hearing this from a lot of people. How do you take these opportunities, these fellowships, the diversity initiatives, and turn them into jobs? Because I know in my experience, I felt grateful for opportunities, and so I wanted to be of service, and then I was so eager to assist that it was very hard to then make the leap to actually get a seat at the table to make the product. Do you have any advice on that?
Leave. You know, the reason I eventually, I went to Slate and I did amazing work there for 2 years, and Slate was my first full-time job ever, right? So I graduated in 2008 when the world was kind of ending the first time, and so no one was getting hired, and I think I just I think freelancing though is important and contract work is important because it helped me build the relationships, and I know that's
and your skills. It helps you build your skills.
Yeah. So I guess like to yourself, if you're a contract, I think that one of the biggest mistakes I see people make as freelancers and contractors is that you stay like you're a full-time person. And I made the same mistake. If you're a contractor, go in, do an amazing job, spend time, but maybe you leave and you work from home, or you leave and you work from the cafe next to your other gig. Like if you are an independent contractor, be independent. Because otherwise, if you're there full time, then there's not going to be that sense of like, oh, we need to keep her here. It's like dating, isn't it? It's like friends with benefits. If you if you want a relationship, then maybe the friends with benefits situation shouldn't. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking now.
Can you talk a little bit about the question not of just racial and ethnic and cultural diversity, but socioeconomic diversity? My partner works in a factory, and often he tells me the conversations you're having on public radio in Vermont are not the conversations we're having, and we're not your audience, and we don't feel like a part of it. So part of that recruitment part is also socioeconomic, but if you can't afford to have the job, you're not going to take that job.
Yeah. I will say that I went to college, and one of the things I noticed, one of my many jobs at WNYC was temping in HR, and I remember the weight that was put on schools, and I remember feeling like, wow, like none of the CUNY schools are being held up as a desirable place to find candidates. And now, even as someone that works at WNYC, I also teach at Brooklyn College, and I'm constantly sending job posts to my students. So it's an individual.
We get the college degree requirement off our job descriptions last year.
I mean,
I'm sorry, what you said, what's that?
We had a college degree requirement on our job descriptions until last year, and if you have the relevant experience but no degree, and you can't even get your foot in the door with no college degree, any college.
But as someone that, I keep thinking, as someone that hires people at WNYC, but like, does that something that comes up in conversation as far as like, you know, not the same people? I mean, I remember being encouraged to go to SALT. Does everyone know what SALT is? Do you know what SALT is, Karen?
Yeah.
And I mean, I just couldn't afford it. I would have loved to go, but I was just like, I just can't afford this thing.
Look, it's, you know, public radio, it just has become, and I've been working in it almost 40 years. When I first went in, it was a much less desirable field, and there were a lot more just plain regular folks who worked there. As it has become a very prestigious job, it's super competitive. And so that's part of the problem. When you're on a hiring committee and you look at the range of candidates, it's very competitive. Is class or socioeconomic issues real in terms of the reporting, the kinds of reporting that people will do? Yes. And I would say, I actually don't know how to answer this question, because the degrees and the schools that people go to now are dazzling. I mean, I went to the State University, you know. That's where I went, that's where I got my degree from. I don't have a graduate degree. So I take your point, and we have to do a better job.
Hi, I just want to say I went to Transom, which is similar to SALT, but they offer scholarships for underrepresented groups. So if you're interested in Transom, apply. I got a scholarship, to be honest. I just want to read you something that I just tweeted while I was sitting there and thinking about what you were saying. If I can get my phone out. Call me Chidi Adegonye, but I understand that diversity is good for business when it comes to journalism to get access to the stories you want to cover, but shouldn't it also simply be an end in itself?
Yeah. I mean, in a city like New York, it certainly should, but I guess I feel like there are times when people feel like they should do it because it's the right thing to do, and I think it's actually much bigger than that. It's critical that we do it. It's for getting larger audiences, it's critical to the journalism, and that's sort of that's how I feel about it. I mean, yes, it's the right thing to do, because in this city, there are fewer white people than there are people of color. And at WNYC, we're the public radio station in this city. So it is the right thing to do, but it also makes the work better.
Yeah, I just wonder if you could make that same argument in a place like that's very underrepresentative of, you know, like if it's a very white place that you're reporting, doesn't that also follow that you wouldn't hire people of color in those white places? You know what I mean? Because that same argument would follow if it's like representative as opposed to kind of reflecting the nation at large. You see what I mean? There's a subtle difference
but I
there.
also, I mean, I think, you know, and I'm thinking about, we were talking about Nicole Hannah-Jones's response to NPR's fellowship. And I always look at it like in any, even like within activist spaces, right? They're like the inside-outside game. So there are people that are going to be out there being like, we need this no matter what, I don't care, blah, blah, blah. And then there are people that are inside that make compromises to bring certain people in the door. And then there are people that are, as I said earlier, that are Kanye, right? And so I think that everyone plays a role in that. And so I think it's for certain people that are making decision makers, what you have to tell them in order for them to buy into diversity is that this is good for the bottom line. And that's what they need to hear, right? But of course, there are going to be people that are like, no matter what, this is important and we need to have it because it's important. You know, so for me, I always think about it as like a negotiation tactic. And I haven't figured out where I land yet, but.
And it's not an either or. I've only lived in New York. I have a limited worldview in that respect. But yes, hire people, make your world bigger. That's really the point.
Yeah. And like the charge for me right now is like, as we're out of time, is for people that are decision makers to like really do the advocating and speaking up piece, because I think like that is to me because I can't tell you how many times people have talked about how great diversity is, even recruited diverse candidates.
Right.
But when it came down to making a hiring decision, have gone with the comfortable choice. So my charge is for the hiring managers to really do the work.
And my charge is to expand your network. Go beyond your friendship circle and your comfort circle. It will enrich your life. It's doing the right thing, and it makes the journalism better.
Yeah. Thank you.